Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 4, Vidura approaches Maitreya, text number 34. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Dehanya Shamcha Tashyaivam. Dehanya Shamcha Tashyaivam. Dhiranam Dayavadanam. Dhiranam Dayavadanam. Anyesham Duskarakadam. Anyesham Duskarakadam. Pushunam Viklavatmanam. Pushunam Viklavatmanam. Dehanya Shamcha Tashyaivam. Dehanya Shamcha Tashyaivam. Dhiranam Dayavadanam. Dhiranam Dayavadanam. Anyesham Duskarakadam. Anyesham Duskarakadam. Pushunam Viklavatmanam. Pushunam Viklavatmanam. Dehanya Shamcha Tashyaivam. Dehanya Shamcha Tashyaivam. Dhiranam Dayavadanam. Dhiranam Dayavadanam. Anyesham Duskarakadam. Anyesham Duskarakadam. Pushunam Viklavatmanam. Pushunam Viklavatmanam. Translation. The Lord's glorious acts and His acceptance of various transcendental forms for the performance of extraordinary pastimes in the mortal world are very difficult for anyone other than His devotees to understand, and for the beasts they are simply a mental disturbance. The transcendental forms and pastimes of the Lord as described in the Bhagavad Gita are difficult subject matters for those who are not devotees to understand. The Lord never reveals Himself to persons like the Gyanis and Yogis, and there are others who, because of their envying the Lord from the bottom of their hearts, are classified amongst the beasts. And for such envious beasts, the subject matter of the Lord's appearance and disappearance is simply a mental disturbance, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:15. The miscreants who are simply concerned with material enjoyment, who work very hard like beasts of burden, can hardly notice the personality of Godhead at any stage due to a surika bhav, or a spirit of revolt against the Supreme Lord. The transcendental bodily expansions manifested by the Lord for His pastimes in the mortal world, and the appearance and disappearance of such transcendental expansions are difficult subject matters, and those who are not devotees are advised not to discuss the Lord's appearance and disappearance, lest they commit further offences at the lotus feet of the Lord. The more they discuss the transcendental appearance and disappearance of the Lord and the etheric spirit, the more they enter into the darkest regions of hell, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 16:20. Anyone who is against the transcendental loving service of the Lord is more or less a beastly creature, as confirmed in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, it's quite clear here that for persons who don't have higher Vedic knowledge or association with devotees, and some sort of blessings from Guru or Krishna, the appearance and disappearance of Krishna and His expansions is very difficult to understand. And we see, we have the Das avatars, the 10 primary avatars of Krishna. Of course, we understand that there are limited numbers, but these 10 primary, some of them aren't in human body. So for a person to try to understand, is there a God? Maybe there is, maybe there not. And then we present, well, actually, it can come as a fish, it can come as a boar, it can come as a half man, half lion, etc. Very difficult for, you know, the conditioned soul to grasp these ideas. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, or in the Krishna book, the summary of Bhagavatam, 10th canto, we have the chapter Prayers of the Personified Leaders. So there, Prabhupada mentions the appearance of Krishna is the answer to all imaginative iconography of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone imagines the form of God according to his mode of nature. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said the Lord is the oldest person. Therefore, some people imagine God must be very old. And we see the example on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Was it Michelangelo? He painted a picture of God, and he's showing him as an old man with a long white beard. So that's, you know, if he's the oldest, he must look the oldest. But what that basically means is he's under the influence of time. You know, I mean, you could think, well, he's looking old, his beard is long and white, so as time goes on, he'd get even older and his beard getting longer, and one time, you know, will he die? You know, I mean, if we're talking about some influence of time, time is more powerful than that person. So, according to one's, you know, general understanding, one can take these comments literally. Also, in the Brahma Samhita, it describes Krishna has eternal form as a fresh youth. So the word Navayovana means eternally youthful. So, hang on. He said he's the oldest, and now we're hearing he's eternally youthful. So how to understand that? So if we're trying to use our own intelligence, very difficult to understand. There was one Indian gentleman who was speaking to Prabhupada, and he said, Prabhupada, in the Vedas said that Krishna said that the sun and the moon represent Krishna's eyes. Is that correct? Prabhupada, yeah, that's correct. The sun and the moon are Krishna's eyes. So then he said, but Prabhupada, at night time, I can see the sun and the moon, but I can't see Krishna. And Prabhupada said, yes. It is like when you see the cat at night time, you can see the cat's eyes, but you can't see the body of the cat. So therefore, my dear sir, you are in ignorance. So he said that with a smiling face, but basically, you know, so it's a very good example that if we're just depending on our mundane vision, then we're not going to see things as they are. So we need sashta chakshus, we need vision of the Vedas to properly understand. And every religious tradition, you know, they can be defined perhaps as polytheism, monotheism, so that adds another sort of factor into it. Is there a God? Maybe there is, maybe there's not. But he can come in different forms. And is there one God? Is there many gods? What does it all mean? Once again, very difficult to understand. So really, or in the different traditions, like Christianity, for instance, in Exodus, in the Old Testament, 20.5, apparently this is what God spoke to Moses. This is what's written in the Old Testament, that you shall not, this is in regard to worshipping idols, because we have in the Ten Commandments, you shall not worship any graven image. So in reference to that, Moses was told apparently that you shall not worship them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, on the third or fourth generations of those who hate me, So when you talk about hate, it's a pretty strong word, you know. I mean, our conception of God, that, you know, Krishna, he's always smiling. There's always a slight smile on his face, and he's equipoised. He doesn't love or hate anybody. He's equipoised to all his parts and parcels. But, and this idea that visiting the iniquity, or in other words, the punishment of the fathers on the children, on the third or fourth generations. So it's pretty extreme sort of punishment according to this. I know in North Korea, for instance, there may be other countries, but North Korea, if a person commits some crime or offence against the government, you know, insults the government, whatever, it's not just them that get jailed or go to the concentration camp. Their parents go, their children go, and their grandchildren go, so third or fourth generation. So, in other words, it's setting an example that don't offend the government or everyone. You know, everyone is punished. So, you know, so this concept of God is like well, as I mentioned, a jealous God. You know, that you know, always angry. You know, always wanting to throw people down to hell. This is the concept in some Christian traditions. And in Islam, apparently this is from the Quran, but you are commanded to worship only Allah. You don't worship any prophet, sage, creature or idol. You bear witness that there is none worthy to be worshipped but Allah. And we bear witness that Prophet Muhammad is a messenger of Allah. God Almighty hates, here's that word again, hates, that people worship anything besides Him. He is above the heavens watching us, hearing us and knowing everything. His knowledge is present everywhere. But He is not there inside the stones and pillars as the polytheists and idolaters believe. So Muslims are going to have trouble with Lord Nishingadev because he appeared from the pillar. So, but, you know, anyway, I mean, I'm not an expert on these other traditions, but I'm just reading what's there. So his knowledge is present everywhere, but there are some places that he's not. So if there's some places that you're not, it means you don't actually know everything. Whereas Krishna manifests as the Paramatma. So he's everywhere, within every atom, between every atom. In that way, he's omniscient, he knows everything. So different conceptions. So as we heard Krishna book, according to one's mode of according to the, you know, previous lives and the people we associate with, we're going to have different conceptions. I remember Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who gave a class years ago, he said he was speaking to a Roman Catholic cardinal from the Philippines. His name was actually Cardinal Sin. But Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, so what is your concept of God? And so the cardinal said, my concept is that God is a burning candle. That was it. That's his understanding of who God is, or what God is, a burning candle. How can you have a relationship or serve such a thing? You know, there can be no reciprocation. Of course, Buddhism is basically voidistic. Of course, from what I read, Buddhists don't say they're atheistic, but then again, they don't accept a creator God. So it's a little bit vague if they say they're not atheists, but they can't present a personality who's God. It's a bit difficult to understand, but apparently Buddha was quoted as saying, in relation to their concept of one's relationship with the universe or the all-pervading energy, he said that the limitless, vast, mysterious, unconditioned, which is not a distinct thing, but rather a description of reality itself, is an inexplicable union. So I'm sure that makes sense to all of us. So really their goal is nirvana. So but Nirvana, some people say Nirvana is a place, others say Nirvana is a state of mind, so maybe it's both. Literally in Sanskrit, Nirvana means out of the forest, or no forest, Nirvana. So perhaps that could relate to out of the forest and material enjoyment. Okay, so that's good. You're getting out of the forest, material enjoyment. In other words, you're renouncing the world, but what do you do then? There has to be engagement, service. Otherwise, you're just sort of in limbo. Like Prabhupada, when he first came to the West in the 60s, he noticed that the hippies, they were renouncing material things, the material goals that their parents had, they were giving it up. So Prabhupada said, this is good. They're renouncing, but they don't have anything to go to after that. Once you renounce something, you have to go, otherwise you're just in limbo. The senses need to be engaged. So if you're not engaged in material, they need to be engaged in spiritual. Otherwise you just fall back to the material platform again. So from the Vaishnava point of view, because when we talk about Vaishnava, even if we include it, because we know when we talk about Hinduism, it's a bit of a misnomer. Hinduism doesn't appear in the Shastra at all. But if according to the modern understanding that Vaishnavism is a branch of so-called Hinduism, it's really only Vaishnavas have a clear concept of Krishna's appearance and disappearance of the different forms. It's very clear in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and made even clearer by the purports of the previous acharyas, that even if we don't completely understand, we do have the curtains open, we see the form of the Lord. So he's appearing in different forms. We have Panchatattva appearing in 5 different forms. We have the Dasavatar. And the pastimes of Krishna are eternally going on throughout the different universes. So, we have that information there. So technically, the Vaishnava concept, if we talk about polytheism, monotheism, atheism, etc., the technical understanding of the Vaishnava concept can be known as polymus monotheism. So it's combining the two. So what that means is that from one supreme form, so many other forms are coming. So polymus monotheism. So if you ask, so is Hare Krishna monotheistic or polytheistic? You can say, well, it's actually both. It's polymus monotheism. So one supreme person, but from him, so many forms are coming. In the Katha Upanishad, 2.2.13, it's a verse that Prabhupada quoted often, Nicha Nichanam, Chitanas Chitananam, Ekopahunam, Vadati Kamam, that Krishna is the prime eternal among all eternals. He is the supreme living entity of all living entities, and he alone is maintaining all life. So we are all eternal as individual spirit souls, but Krishna is the supreme eternal, and he's maintaining us in that way. So also the purport to Bhagavad Gita 4:35, Prabhupada says that Krishna is the supreme personality Godhead, is the cause of everything. Even the millions of incarnations are only his different expansions. Similarly, living entities are also expansions of Krishna, so as Tatastha Shakti as the marginal energy. Krishna's 3 primary energies, the spiritual, the material and the marginal. So we're the Tatastha or the marginal. And I think in my last class I mentioned that the Parabhasha Sutta, or the prime verse in Bhagavatam, which sort of encapsulates the whole understanding of the Srimad Bhagavatam in relating to Krishna's position. that's 1.3.28. Eta chamsa kala pumsa Krishna tu Bhagavan Swayam Indriya Vya Kolam Lokam Vijanti Jige. That all the incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord, but Lord Shri Krishna is the original Supreme Personality. So all of them appear on planets, wherever there is a disturbance created by the atheists, the Lord incarnates to protect theists. So many references and understanding can be there that Krishna is the Supreme Personality, and from Him everything is coming. And how to understand properly, sort of Guru Sadhu Sastra, that's how we understand everything, but specifically Krishna says I can only be understood by pure devotional service. So that devotional service which is free from desire, karma or jnana or mental speculation like that. So pure devotional service means acting solely for the pleasure of Krishna. And that way Krishna says I can be easily understood. So Prabhupada mentions in the purport, or in the verse, it says that for the beast they are simply a mental disturbance. So Prabhupada, he comments on that there are others who, because of their envying the Lord from the bottom of their hearts, are classified amongst the beasts, and for such envious beasts, the subject matter of Lord's appearance and disappearance is simply a mental disturbance. So that's referring to Bhagavad Gita 7.15. So mention Asurika Bhava, one who has a spiritual revolt against the Supreme Lord. That they just don't want to know Him, or just have no concept of trying to understand, or in the case of like Kamsa Ravana, they want to try to kill him. So that verse of those miscreants who are grossly foolish, this is the four impious persons who never surrender to Krishna. Those miscreants are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. So 4 different types of persons. And he mentions that, Prabhupada mentions that the Lord never reveals Himself to persons like the Gyanis and the Yogis. So it's interesting comment, because they can be considered on the yogic ladder. You know, Kama Kanda, Kama Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Astanga Yoga, up to Bhakti Yoga. But his comment that he can never be at least properly understood. Prabhupada mentions these different classifications in different ways, in different classes. One class I heard, he mentions about the karmis, the gyanis, the yogis. That's like first class, second class, third class, transcendentalists. So they're trying to uplift themselves. In another class, he was talking about the first class rascal, second class rascal, third class rascal. So according to his mood, he's describing them in different ways. And just going along with it is the Surik Bhav, or the spirit of revolt against the Supreme Lord, Bhagavad Gita 4.40. We hear but ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness, they fall down. For the doubting soul there is happiness neither in this world or in the next. So in the purport, Prabhupada mentions 3 classifications of persons who are in this category. So first he says persons who are almost like animals, have no faith in or knowledge of the standard revealed scriptures. So that's the first category. So this is what he's talking about, all like beastly personalities that have no faith in and no knowledge of and don't care about. Second category, even though they have knowledge of or can cite passages from the revealed scriptures, have actually no faith in these words. So this is sometimes like, maybe politicians, they're making their speech and they might quote the Bible, or, some sort of reference that, in God we trust or whatever, but they've got no faith in it. No faith in what, they're saying. It's just propaganda so what I'm trying to think of. Anyway, they're just, it sounds good, but there's really no faith in the third type, even though others may have faith in Scripture like Bhagavad Gita, they do not believe in or worship the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So maybe, Mayavadis, that they might have a concept of religion, but they don't really accept or worship the personality of God. So Prabhupada continues, such persons cannot have any standing in Christian consciousness without faith in God and His revealed word, find no good in this world nor in the next, for them there is no happiness whatsoever. So we know the history going back about 2,500 years ago, the Brahminical class or caste in India become quite corrupt, and they were utilising the authority of the Vedas to maintain large-scale animal sacrifice and meat eating. And because, of course, the Brahmanas are considered the head of society, if they're setting a bad example, obviously the rest of society are not going to be properly situated. So at that time, Krishna, he asked Lord Shiva to appear as he appeared as Shankaracharya. So it's mentioned in Padma Purana that Lord Shiva is speaking to his wife, and he's saying, Krishna, he told me that in order to bewilder the atheists in Kali Yuga, I described the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, to be without any form and without qualities. Similarly, in explaining Vedanta scripture, I described the non-scriptural and inauspicious Mayavad philosophy in order to mislead the impious population toward atheism by denying the personal form of my beloved Lord. So, in a sense, he's really doing that to keep these, impious persons, Mayavad atheists, away from Krishna's pastimes. Because Prabhupada, he mentions at the end of this protocol, anyone who is against the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he said, the more they discuss the transcendental appearance and disappearance of the Lord in the asuric spirit, the more they enter into the darkest regions of hell. So, in a sense, it's like locking somebody up. If somebody is continually committing crimes, the government has no choice but to lock people up. It's for their own good and to protect, the innocent public. So in the same way, Shiva, he was empowered by Krishna to appear as Shankaracharya to bewilder the atheists and to give them basically atheistic or Mayavad philosophy to keep them away from Krishna's pastimes, so they wouldn't, get themselves deeper and deeper into, apparatus offending Krishna's pastimes. So, we know that Shankaracharya's teachings are still very popular in India, but from what I understood, not many seem to know the actual background behind why Shankaracharya appeared. Of course, after Shankaracharya, when the Brahmanas had become corrupt, actually Buddha appeared before Shankaracharya and he rejected the Vedas because the Vedas were being misused. But then, there needs to be a law book, a rule book for the humankind, a guide to follow. So then there was a whole 5 personalities who appeared after that, and each one slowly reintroduced the Vedas back into human society, at least within India. So Shankaracharya appeared, and he was using sastra, but he was misrepresenting it for a particular purpose. But after him came the four Vaishnava Acharyas, Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Vishnu Swami, and Nimbakacharya. And so they sort of basically laid the groundwork for Lord Chaitanya's appearance. So their different philosophies, they come closer and closer to the ultimate reality, which Lord Chaitanya then presented, Chinta Veda Aveda Tattva, which gives us the definitive position of the living entity that is one and different from Krishna. So same spiritual aspect, but in a minute form. So simultaneously one and difference, but in inconceivable way. So this was the final conclusion which Lord Chaitanya gave to us. So Uddhava, I believe, is speaking. Vidura also heard from Uddhava, yeah. So it's nearly coming to the end of this conversation. And from here, as we've heard earlier, even though Vidura wanted to hear from Uddhava all the intimate instructions that Krishna gave him directly, because Uddhava was much younger and Vidura was quite older. Vidura was actually about the same age as Uddhava's father. He told him that you should go and speak to Maitreya. Maitreya was close by when Krishna was speaking to me, and he heard all these sublime truths. So, just out of humility, he said Vidura to go to speak to Maitreya. So, we're nearly at the end of the chapter. So, the next chapter, Vidura talks to Maitreya. So, to reveal all the intimate truths that Krishna was speaking to Uddhava. And at that point, Uddhava, by Krishna's blessings, he went to Bhadranath Ashram, and there he was imparting all this teaching, this knowledge to the sages who were residing there. So in that sense, Uddhava was representing Krishna in that way, and that's the role of the sages and the saintly persons, that wherever they travel, they're distributing transcendental knowledge to the conditioned souls for their benefit. So whether Krishna comes himself or empowers others, still the mission of the goal is the same, that they're trying to describe the very attractive pastimes of Krishna so that the conditioned child becomes attracted to that and is put on the path back to the spiritual world. So we'll end there. If there's any questions or comments at all.
Thank you for the class. Prabhu, you were mentioning about Prabhupada mentioned the asuric bhava, this mentality of being envious. So we see that even us as aspiring devotees, we have this asuric mentality. How many millennium lifetimes we've been, and maybe we've been, as it's described in the purport, that beastly nature, and then we have to suffer, and then we got an opportunity to get a human birth again. After how many cycles, we don't know. So you were also mentioning about Lord Chaitanya, because in the purport it sounded like there's just no hope. We have that kind of mentality. But in Kali Yuga, you mentioned Lord Chaitanya. Can you talk a bit more about that, like the hope we have that we can get out of this kind of negative, like this asuri bhava mentality?
Well, so it's all about association, basically. You need to associate with those who have love of Krishna within them. Like Uddhava, where he was travelling, he was distributing. And like Narada Muni is constantly moving, distributing knowledge of Krishna. So, we take on the qualities of the people we associate with. So Lord Chaitanya, he didn't just stay in one place. and preached. He did the whole circumambulation of India, for years he was travelling, and in this way distributing love of God. So, Lord Chaitanya is understood to be the most magnanimous avatar for expansion, because he didn't take weapons with him. His beauty was his weapon. And by that beauty, people are attracted. Wherever he went, thousands of people were following him because he was such an attractive personality like that. So this is the mission of, Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, the devotees distribute. That natural attraction to Krishna's pastimes is there within the heart, in an innate seed form. So, but for those persons who are, maybe covered over by, asuric sort of mentality, this is a temporary thing. It's not who we actually are. The living entity isn't an asura. They've taken on asuric mood, because the spirit soul can never be covered. But we can be covered by the modes of material nature in that way. And by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, who are constantly roaming around the earth, distributing prasad, distributing books, distributing knowledge, at some point, they may be fortunate to come in contact with that, and at that point, their journey, back to Godhead can begin, even if it takes many, many lifetimes. From Krishna's point of view, it's very, very short. There was one painting one of our artists did, and it was a jiva who had just come back to the spiritual world, and Krishna was embracing him. And it was sort of the mood of the painting was that, the understanding was we've been away for so many lifetimes. But from Krishna's point of view, it's very short. The jiva comes back and Krishna, hey, where have you been? We've missed you. It's like, from his point of view, it's very short. So therefore, Krishna, meaning the all-attractive personality, we can't stay away forever. If the desire is there, but generally speaking, at some point, hopefully we come in contact with transcendental knowledge, or we realise that, repeated birth, death, old age and disease isn't what we're meant to be doing. So for those who are slowly develop pious credits, slowly the heart becomes purified, and at some point, they become qualified to contact transcendental knowledge in one form or another. So really, the point is taking good association, and in that way we can avoid, any sort of asuric bhav or atheistic mentality. So even though the great souls who are going out on the street giving books or catering for prasad distribution, we're associating the conditioned souls, but it's on the basis of devotional service. So Krishna protects us like that. Yes, sir. Press the button.
Hare Krishna. My question is about, you went through the different religions and traditions and how they view their conception of God. Understanding that, in one sense, they're viewing God, and their conception of God, as one who is like just a supreme being, one who is better than the rest. And the Vedic and the Vaishnava conception of the Lord, which is the Samambana, the source of everything. But at the same time, they can argue that, that's this conception of the source of everything, how can you, and at the same time you're saying that you're trying to have some sort of relationship with the source of everything. Whereas we at least have some conception like hates, and he has personality, he has all these different thoughts and feelings, and so we're just trying that comes through in our scriptures. And similarly, we can look at some of our practices and see that we do have some parts of our worship and our service that involves that kind of reverential aspect, such as bowing down, deity worship, etc., yagyas, etc. So how do we reconcile that with our practice and show that there's actually a difference in the way in which, even though we are worshipping the Lord as the source of all sources, there's still that ability to establish the relationship.
Yeah, well, when we're bowing down to a person. We're not bowing down to a concept. We come into the temple, Krishna in his deity form is non-different from Krishna himself. So we're bowing down knowing that this is Krishna. I'm performing my religious duty, in love to bow down to him. So it's the Vaishnava tradition is very unique in that we have, if you ask anybody, ask a Christian, what does God look like? They'll say, well, nobody's seen him, nobody knows. But if you told them, if I told you I've seen God, would you believe me? They'll say, no, I don't believe you, so what can you do? Even if there's somebody who has seen, we're seeing Krishna every day. They won't accept, because that's there, like I mentioned the Krishna book, that according to the particular mode of nature they're situated in, their concept of the Supreme will develop or not develop. So, Krishna gives us what we want as super soul. He understands what we're desiring, so he gives it. So, if we're born into like Islamic culture, Muslim culture, and the concept of Allah is very angry, etc., somehow or other, that's the conception that we've developed within the heart. Whereas others have one concept of a loving God. So, according to the individual desire and the mode of nature that we're associating, we will develop a particular concept. But for us as Vaishnavas, it's very clear. Krishna is the Supreme Person. He does have multiple forms, but one Supreme form, and we can render service like that. So, is that what you're after? Okay, anything else? Yes,
you mentioned, you mentioned the different sort of negative aspects of other religious lines, but in the Vedas there's also quite a lot of that sort of things. I think there's a book called Teachings from the Puranas I found in my upbringing. Maybe it's an ISKCON book.
Necessarily that you have to go to the hellish realm to have a hellish life. There's plenty of places on this planet where people are living hellish lives. So anyway, basically it's there just to warn people, to try to encourage them to stay on the proper track. So that would be my response. Okay, thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam,